Today we are going to learn how you can create an element in your web page using JavaScript. So you have your blank web page there. Let's try to create elements using JavaScript. So again, in JavaScript, you can add and delete elements within your JavaScript code. So to create an element, you use the keyword create element. So remember everything, these methods are all in the document. So you have to access your document that creates element, and you are going to pass in the tag name that you want. So let's say we want to create a p tag, and we want to assign this. So we want to create a p tag, and p dot we can either say inner text, that is the text you want to put inside. So we say hello world. If we run this now, you see that our web page is still blank because we have not injected these elements into our page. So we just created the tag. So if you console log your p, you see that you have that HTML paragraph element there. So which means you can also do inner HTML here, and you can pass in your value, just like what you do when you get the element by ID. But in order for this element that we created to appear on the screen or be injected inside the body, we have to use the append method in order to put this HTML tag that we've created inside. So you do document.append child. Take note, the name is append child. So you pass in the variable name or the identifier of the new created element in there. So remember that your document, I said, is the web page, yeah? So to execute this on Node, only one element on document allowed. Okay, because we are assessing this directly, so we need to have where we want to actually inject the node. So right now we have this body. So we want to append it in this body. So we can as well do what we call the one we've learned before. So if we say body equals to document.get, remember by tag name, because we want to get our body tag. So if we log this to see if it's a single object, let's keep this out for now. If we log this, you see that is a collection. So don't forget that tag names gives us a collection. So if we want to get the body, we have to access the index 0, which will give us this HTML element. And we now say body.append child, and we pass in the node child, which is the p tag. So if you run this now, voila, we get our text here in the browser. So why this didn't work, you see the warning message we get, we can only, because this document already have stuff and we are trying to append to it. So which means it's going to, this is in real life, what we are trying to do is add to this document. So which JavaScript tells us that is not the standard. All right. So in order to append, you have to either create a div. You can make a div in here and give it an ID. For example, test. Maybe this is where you want to inject your element inside. You can also do that. So if it's here, you want to inject it, let's inspect elements and you see the difference. You see that this one is appended in the body. You see in the body tag, that's where the p tag is injected because we instructed it to do so. All right. So if you want to send it into the ID we just created, we can as well do this dot, the div that we created. I want to do get element by ID, and the ID is tests. So we can say div.append child, the p tag we created above. We can also change the p information, inner HTML, second text. All right, so if we run this, const div only not allowed. Okay, what did we do wrong now? Oh, sorry, this I uncommented this by mistake. All right, so if we run this, you see second text there. So this one is overriding and injecting this. So if we inspect element, I want you to take note. You see, this is inside the div that we created. It's inside. So that's how to create an element and also add it or append it in our web page. All right, so we know how to append, we know how to create. And now what if we want to remove? So we have also, as we have append child, we also have remove child. So if after appending, let's say we have P1, because this element is the same, so we don't want to modify the same element. So we say P2, and we want to put this one inside the body. P is not defined. Where? Okay, this one. All right. Yeah. Cool. So we have this and we have this. So let's say we want to remove the hello word. Yeah. The hello word is P1. So you can do, remember where we appended the child is in the body and not in the div. So if you say div remove child and you put P1, it will probably fail because that's not where P1 is. So make sure when you are calling this, you are calling it in the right element. So we say remove child. Then you pass in the child node that you want removed. So it's the P1 there that we want to remove. When you run this now, you see that you have only second text. It has removed P1. So the same, you can also have elements already predefined in here. Testing. and let's give it an ID, rem. All right, so let's assume that we already have this ID, this text already in our browser. So if you see this, you see the testing there. We can also target this testing to remove this testing. One, we can target it by the ID and remove, or we access the body and delete the children. So if we come here and we say const p equals to document dot get element by ID, rem, and p dot remove, this should do the trick, I think. So you see, we target the element itself. Now, take note, this is not remove child. Remove child only removes a child of an element because we are calling it inside the body, right? This one is targeted directly. I targeted this element by the ID and I called a remove method on it. So this one will delete the targeted element, okay? So, but if you want to remove an element from a child element of another HTML tag, then you can use remove child. You can also use document.write to write something in your HTML page. So if you do document.write testing writing. If you do this, you see testing writing in there. But this one is not a p tag. It's just going to put it on the body element. You see here, if you inspect element, you see that it's just a text node. So it's not a fancy element like the p tag. You see that the p tags are red. So, but you can also use this to print text on the screen. You can also replace text. Let's comment out this for now. If we run this code, you see that we have text second and testing, right? So we can also want to replace this p element. For example, instead of us appending this to the body, the hello world, instead of appending it to the body, we want to use it to replace this element. All right, so we create a P1, and I want to make sure we're not removing it, so it's here. We create a P1, we have a P tag here that has the rem property. So now, we want to, now if I run this, for example, if I run this now, I want to remove, so you understand what happens here. Second text done. So if I run this now, you see only testing, right? So we have this p tag here that has hello world. We want to replace this testing with this p tag that has hello world, okay? So in order for us to know that it changed, if you inspect element, you will see that this ID that has testing has an ID rem on it. So this one that we want to use it to replace does not have an ID, okay? So we want to replace this particular one with this one. So let's try this. P dot replace, no, it's on the body. So we need to do body dot replace child. Now we need to pass in the first parameter, which is the new child that we want to put. So we want to put P1. Now the second parameter will be the old child. the old child that we want to replace. Okay, so we need to replace P. Remember, we found the P here, and is also a child of body tag. So we want to swap this with this. So if we run this code, you see the testing show for a little bit there, then it switched to hello world. And if you inspect element again, you see that this hello world have no ID rem on it. So it was replaced. That is how you can replace an element in your web page.